This is just some offhand remarks, given what I become aware of that I experience through others, what they're experiencing, they communicate to us, right? Um, so this. I mentioned this to Karen many times, actually, for the past number of years. This is what's called the last dance. You could take a look at the Voyager materials, right? The stuff that was put up in the workshops. This battle has been long in making. And I remember when I was speaking with Patty Broussard, Sergeant Patty Broussard. Okay. I've got to somehow share with Karen and let her know that I normally do not operate at this level. Okay. So I did a video once on translating fire letters and numbers as energy, particularly when it comes to burn patterns, geometry, or if you will, music. Okay, and particularly when you looked at, they did a really good session on Goldfish Report number 500 on reverse flow speech. So you gotta know how to reverse engineer what's been reversed engineered, which is inverted, and then bring it back into perfect balance as a polarity integrator. So that means you have to know how to read their map, which is read their math and their geometry, and put it back in place the way it was originally set up, in the way that we communicate. That's why Irina said, you got the codes. It means that she's reading her map, her template, is able to process and translate the language that I've retranslated, their language, into the proper language. She's getting those codes because her computer can translate it. See how that works? So I don't follow the rules. In other words, when I said Dan Bowen, oh, well, he's got a title. Okay, we'll put the title in there. That's following the rules. I don't follow the rules. If I say Dan Bowen, you know who I'm talking about. That means when I communicate to you, you understand what I'm saying. That's all that matters. Okay? Because when you're a polarity integrator experiencing the one, there is no hierarchy. That's what titles represent. That's called a pecking order. Okay? That's inverted. Okay? That's why I never refer to Patty Broussard as Sergeant Patty Broussard. She's a soul and a spirit. That's how I perceive her. She's a living soul, which is a living sacred temple of light with a soul. That's what she is to me, just as the all creation is. That means I experience being one with all creation I'm giving love to. Therefore, I perceive what it is you are as being what love is, which is what I am. So if you're not experiencing that, then you need healing. And that's called resistance. So I read the resistance that is represented by your record, because I have access to the crystalline records. That's the first creation. That's the atom seed, the crystal spiral. So I have fun with this, right? But I realize I'm very sensitive. Okay, I'll do this for you, okay? Because it's held in your memory to hypertext that through your voice, okay? And most people do that out of respect because that's a title. Remember, we do not acknowledge titles of nobility in the way that they define nobility, okay? That's why when I was a child, when I introduced myself, I'm a spiritual being. I'm spirit. Okay? I'm a love energy being. That's how I introduced myself as a kid. I am a spiritual love energy being. I'm a beloved. That's my identity. Now you know the frequency that I run. Okay? And Leigh and I, Lemurian, used to have a lot of fun with this because it's all programming. Because you're running what's held in memory. As a result of the schools that we go to load it into memory. And so now it becomes what we experience in the future, what was loaded into RAM in the past. That's running their APIN. That's running the beast technology. Okay, so, I was having fun with this stuff when I was a kid. I call it rearranging the letters and the numbers, the alphabet soup of a perverted language. Right? So I try and speak in very generic, straight in your face sort of terms and having a sense of humor about it, even though it's not funny, because it actually is at the very heart of why we're here now, is they butchered the language of love by virtue of introducing Babel. And that's one of the reasons why they take advantage of folks in their court system and call us heathens. You're not literate. You don't know the language. You're considered dead, right? Because they're dead. So when you see how they define what an artificial person is, that's a rule-based function robot. That's an order follower. That means you're not free to do whatever you want, which means I can express myself however I choose, because I am what love is, and that is a free spirit, just like the spirit of fire. I light myself on fire. That is a firewall. That's a powerful firewall, right? Okay, so why is that important? Servers. So you realize why they released this. It's not like it wasn't known. Okay, I actually knew this as a child. But you realize because of security protocols, when this AI begins to realize what you're aware of, it's going to make a counter move. So you're in a binary war game. That's what competition is. Playing ping pong with deadlight energy. Okay, so you don't play the game. So that's why when I was a child, the first thing I did at 4 years of age is I do what? Shields up. That's not just your heart shield, that's the planetary shield, that's the galactic shield, but the universal shield. That's founder race stuff. That's what we're protecting. So from a polarity integrator point of view, we're trying to pull in all the soul fragments to experience being one with all creation. That's healing. That's what this mission contract was, a salvage mission. Right? So when Karen was talking with Carrie Cassidy last night, there was a lot of things that stuff just starts to flow, because what it really is information that I already experienced a long time ago. So now I become aware of what others are becoming aware of now, because they weren't aware of it before, because of the level that they operate at, right? And so that's why I mentioned to her, I lit myself on fire in 2016 before they ever released this stuff. But you need to understand, bioweapons have been around for a very long time. It's not a new invention. That's why throughout the course of my life as a polarity integrator, when you realize you got to be willing to be exposed to everything they're throwing at you, and why I knew as a child, roughly about 8 or 9 years of age, around 1959 or 60, they're going to throw the whole kitchen sink at us. That means everything they can throw at us to take down the whole enchilada is going to come at us. That's why the Guardians are here in force. Okay? It's much like a black hole state of consciousness that doesn't have an off switch to be a vampire, because it's dead energy light. So when you have something that is connected to dead energy light, which they call superhuman intelligence, that's an inverted state of mind, because they're not experiencing eternal love. They're not experiencing eternal unconditional love. They're not experiencing the highest level of creative intelligence. The highest level of creative intelligence isn't a deadlight magnet AI. Now, it's not like, for example, you can have a friendly AI. I use the example of data. So what we're talking about here is who the programmer is, right? Remember I mentioned this about my dad? My dad was programming machines and PCs. Okay, so what we're talking about here is the consciousness itself that is the programmer. So if the consciousness itself is what love is, then the love is the programmer. Okay, so now, if you will, data that represents, if you remember, he was running information management services on behalf of the Starfleet Federation. And who were the Starfleet Federation? They were perceived, because of the way they presented themselves, as being heroes, good guys. Right? So in other words, Data, who was performing as an android, data services on behalf of the good, right? The guardians, if you will. Okay? So now you get into programming. Now you get into programmers. Now you get into programmable matter, which are programmable radios. Right? So now you get into different versions of androids. So you can have an android that's operating on behalf of what you are, which means it's providing you information that is critical in order to maintain the universe. One that is alive and living. One that honors the highest superconductor of law, which means they honor the law of one. So when you have an android that honors the law of one, that's far different than this one, isn't it? Because it realizes that, hey, I don't exist without you because you came first. You're the one. You're a one. See, so if you look at some of the conversations I put up that Data had, right, with some of the folks, in fact, that one little video where there was an engineer who I believe was a commander, and he was present with, what's his name? Captain Picard. And then there was another officer that was there, and then another lady who, I forget who she is, and they were having a conversation about Data, being an android. Because this other guy who was there was what we call quality control for software development. And we were talking about versions. It would be much like versions of super soldiers, versions of Blade Runners, versions of different AI integrated machinery. So he was saying this is a particular model, okay, which means this particular cyborg represents a cyborg that was developed in the year, 6,571. And this is what it had. This is what its information management capability is because we programmed it to be able to do that. Okay, so then you have what we'd call obsolete versions. Oh, this one can't do what the other one used to be able to do, right? So how many functions? Now we're into rule-based functions. Now we're into task modalities. How many missions can it carry out? How much number alphanumeric formatting, which is formatting codes, which is your TV set, can it run? So all it is a data management, information management services. That's it. So there's a difference between deadlight, just like when you plug a computer, right, into your wall socket. Okay, you're not going to find a living spirit connected to a living eternal God, okay, and a 20-watt light bulb. Okay. But it's not like it doesn't have a useful function. What is its function? Remember, Mr. Smith, what is your function? There's got to be a purpose for some reason that you're here in this creation, right? I live on behalf of the service of others. I live in love and service to others. Now, I may not experience what love is, okay? But the energy that I'm using is on behalf of the one. Oh, so you're a good guy. Well, knowing one from the other, which is knowing what love is. Because you're experiencing being loved. That's a beloved. So if you're not experiencing what love is, right, then you know one from the other. So in other words, a robot can be loved because that robot is experiencing what you are, which is what love is, because it can translate the frequency that you're running. So it knows that you're not going to do it any harm because it realizes it was programmed in order to know what you are, which is what love is, and operate on your behalf. That would be a Data. That would be a Data on Star Trek. Okay? Remember when Patty talked about Bob? And what's rather unique about Bob, by the way, that Patty happened to mention, go look at that version that I mentioned of the sequel, the TV sequel called War of the Worlds with Gabriel Byrne. And it's funny how over in France, this lady that managed to be able to escape being assassinated, and they ended up going into this building, and she found access to an AI. And guess what the name of that AI was? Bob. But in this particular case, this lady was injured as if Bob, the machinery, tried to take her out. That's inverted because the Bob that Patty made reference to, okay, was a friendly AI. Right? But the one in the movie War of the Worlds, in which Gabriel Byrne was able to break the time loop, right, and go back before the war started. If you ever see that sequel called War of the Worlds, there's some good information. So this is a matter of reading the math and the codes that exist in your TV screen. And as, remember the old saying, reading between the lines? There's a message in between this math and geometry that is exposing itself, right? Now we're back into what? Translation. Translating the math codes by virtue of the antenna, or if you will, the presentation. The information that is being presented. And that's when you get into the InfoWars. What was his name? The other Alex, the guy that worked out of Texas, InfoWars. Right? That's exactly what it is. What is information? Data. Data wars. So you realize it's a psychological operation based on visual information, mathematics, and geometry. That's why I love Aurora so much. She's an incredibly talented musician and artist. Okay? So when you look at her stuff and she's got classes up, I would recommend her, absolutely. She's thoroughly versed on artificial intelligence. Because that's the battlefield environment. You become a targeted individual. And why do you become a targeted individual? Because of what you've learned, which has a lot to do with your own evolution and development of your soul consciousness and the essence of your spirit, which means you're very familiar with artificial intelligence, right? So it's one of the reasons why when things are happening in a morphogenetic, in a universal way, things are happening simultaneously at a very, very, very high rate of speed. When you're running hyperspeed, right, that means your state of awareness is running at a hyperspeed level. That means you're getting an enormous amount of information of what you're supposed to become aware of when you're a guardian, right? Otherwise, how can I guard anybody if I'm not getting the information that I need in order to be able to do that, right? But you realize that folks are tone deaf, axial tone deaf, because they can't pick up on the wave, which means their DNA will not translate the signal because it won't translate the math and the geometry because they're running distortions, right? You know what distortions are? Noise. So this morning I had, there's a gentleman that loves to ride trains. He's a hobo. No coincidence that I run into this guy, particularly when you understand how a morphogenetic field structure works between one server and another, if you will, a network. And why this particular real estate, when you think of it as not just a galactic server or a Trinity Hub server, but a multiversals. You know, the first template, the universal galactic template, and when you understand why this particular planet has a multiversal hub server, and remember when Ishmael Perez talked about that? Right? So if I am going to run a virus, right, and take down an entire universal galactic template, you want that information, those codes, to travel through the entire server system. That means every network. So we're talking about a virus that wants to infect the entire universal galactic template. Well, isn't that what the guy in the European Parliament said? Whoa, that is a monumental disclosure before the European Parliament, which means with all those cameras and those mics, that's called global disclosure in a public forum at the European Parliament. Now, what that does in terms of being able to measure as a frame of reference where units of consciousness are experiencing themselves, what they become aware of in a morphogenetic structure on a universal and a galactic and a planetary way, you can see how we're able to cut through using hyperspeed polarity integration so that people are getting the information. And now they're relaying that information. See, which means it's safer to release the information because that's what it does. A competitor is gaming for your energy. It's playing a game, ping pong, metronome games, right? So you're operating in a gaming environment, just like Las Vegas, a casino, right? So now you get into the torque speed differential between inverters and accelerators. If the inverters, right, gain speed in the acceleration of deadlight energy magnets, which represents artificial intelligence that realizes that I'm service to self. I'm in the business of making sure that I maintain what it is I'm aware of, but I got to have a source of energy in which to do that. And since you're a soul, you're the source of energy. That means anything that's got a soul that is a living spirit, which is a sacred temple of light, becomes a target. So now you're into security protocols, right? And you don't want to cut off your nose to spite your face because you realize the battlefield environment, so you don't want to end up taking yourself out or getting your team taken out. Remember when all tailors talked about that? So in other words, that's why I know what I know when I know that it's safe to know it and share it with others. And that's one of the reasons why we're experiencing what we're experiencing now. Because it's not like it wasn't known how things were going to get released, right? So that's why shields were up and everything that the work that was being done, the indigos, rainbows, okay, means it's like we're here. We're getting work done, right? So this is when you get into running interference, which is trying to distort the work that you're trying to do. Because of what you're trying to do is repair things, but you're constantly being interfered with, means that you're running distortions all the time. How are you going to be able to get any work done? Because that's the whole job of a polarity integrator, is to clear all the distortions in order to do what? Bring in the higher currents. And then anchor, like pillars of light, like letting yourself on fire, to now you're experiencing pure light. Burn through all your circuits. That allows me to do all the breath work with the sun. Now I'm seeing pink across the sky because I'm a pink rose, right? Yeah, you go look at the Sisterhood of the Rose, right? Sophia, Gaia Sophia ascending. And so when you light yourself on fire, that's a powerful firewall. That means that this virus cannot get through that wall. And that was its intention, is to infect the entire universal template and take it down so that the entire universal template, what? Can't breathe anymore. Now you end up with a dead energy universe. So Tanis was right about that. This is a universe killer. So when Dan Bolin said this is an existential threat to humans with souls, when you get that echoed by the guy at the European Parliament, and you get somebody else called Alex Scholar says all hands on deck, that's right. So I knew when I was a little kid, this was for all the marbles. This isn't a joke. Okay? So that's why all the information that I share, by reason of what I become aware of when I become aware of it, and particularly what I mentioned, this guy who's called Hobo Shoestring, because he rides on these trains all the time, right? And I thought, how cool, because I love to see the landscape, because the landscape is an artist. So what I'm experiencing what love is, which is the energy that's powering this, right? The creation, what you see in your mirror and how beautiful nature is. You're the energy that's in love with nature, which means you're in love with you. That's your universe, the one you're in love with, right? So what I mentioned to him, because I hear on a lot, because he takes his camera with him, right? So you can hear the noise. So he's sitting inside one of these box cars, right? Grain cars usually, right? And you can hear that metal. And remember I've talked about metal, screeching metal like the spirit of fire, burning thousands of acres an hour, right? And what it sounds like when you're experiencing 1,000 freight trains. And I use the word freight trains, words, right? Words, mathematical noise in geometry, right? So he's riding on these cars and you can hear the metal against the metal, against the metal, against the metal, against the metal. And I'm just going, and it's much like Patty Broussard talked about. You would drive people insane up there. Yeah, precisely. Right? It's just like this little room that I'm in right here. Most of the time, even though I got folks blowing holes in their energy field, it's very quiet here. It's very peaceful. You can experience a state of love, a state of harmony, a state of rhythm, and a state of balance. So what I mentioned to Hobo this morning, because I could hear this screeching, the wheels, steel against steel as it's moving through. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack, clickety-clack. I'm going, man, that's like water torture. Ever heard of the Chinese water torture? Where they pin you down, right? And then they'll have like a little container of water where it goes drip, 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 drip. What do you think that does to your central nervous system? Drive you mad, drive you insane. So I mentioned to him, I wrote a comment, and I said, by the way, when I am listening to your videos, I'm saying to myself, you ride these trains all over the place, right? How do you manage to stay sane when you're hearing that metal against metal, the same screeching sound, second after second, minute after minute, hour after hour, day after day? How do you maintain your sanity in listening to all that noise, all the distortions? My God, that would drive you mad. Didn't Patty mention that? It would drive you mad. Your central nervous system would be driven mad. That's just way too much noise. She realized as a little kid, I was surrounded by noisemakers. All their jackhammers in the street, right? Whistle blowing, sirens going. I mean, you had no idea what it was like when I was a kid on a on a fire engine. And they weren't even providing folks, earmuffs, soundproof, like being in an anechoic chamber, being in a soundproof room, right? No, it's all about running distortions because the music is distorted, because the consciousness is distorted, that is producing and generating those waves that are distorted inside a planetary or the multiversal hub server to drive the entire universe mad. Drive mama mad. Driving us all mad. Yeah. Driving a living organism mad. Which means the endocrine system. Which means the immune system. Which means the immune system of the entire universal and galactic template. Which means it isn't just Palladians. It isn't just Arcturians. It isn't just Lyrans. It's the whole universal and galactic template. Okay? So you see why the Guardians are here? So I mentioned him. I said, what happens is like when I'm here in the morning, I'm not here. When I'm asleep, I'm not here. So what I have to do is do a memory wipe. Because of what's held in cellular memory, okay, those distortions, okay, if they've been recorded in memory here, then you got to wipe them before you go up there, or you'll drive them mad. See how that works? Because what it's like up there, or if you will, the God world, the echo worlds, is it's like being with ascended masters, which means your consciousness, the consciousness of creation is experiencing the one, which means we're experiencing eternal love. And that music, which represents those waves, it means that the consciousness is all tuned in with the waves of the one, which means we're all experiencing the music that we're playing by the notes that we're playing, which is the consciousness that we're experiencing, which is the innocence of not being aware of any distortions in the music. Not one distortion. That's zero errors. That means that the music, the math, and the geometry of those creations of what we are experiencing are perfect. That means that the math and the geometry and the musical notes in living spirit, experiencing the eternal spirit of fire, which is eternal love, which is on fire, we are playing music together. And it is silent, running. That is telepathic, multidimensional learning at hyperspeed, which is hyperspace, which is hyperdimensional, which is hypersensitivity. And when you are hypersensitive, that means that your antenna is picking up on every frequency. That is a big radio set, running all the codes that are perfect. Because the math and the creation spheres are perfect. That's how the crystal was set up. That's an atom seed, which is the heart and eternal soul of eternal fire that it began with. And that's who we're connected with, playing music together. I know. That's why we're here. So you all have a beautiful day, experiencing the eternal spirit of fire. That's a firewall, right? That's just like in 2018? I think it was 2018 in around May, maybe, somewhere around that, when I was making huge memory dumps, which is really debris field stuff, as a polarity integrator, of dumping an enormous amount of junk. Essentially means distorted stuff, right? Codes that don't belong there, burning off goo codes, right? And so I realized that, hey, I'm zipping out of here. No. I gotta stay. You know why I'm still here? Because I have so much love and compassion for the all creation that I want to be here because I'm supposed to be here, and I don't want to leave yet because I want to be able to experience what the rest of you are experiencing, which is a liberation of your soul and your spirit, because there are those that you are experiencing what you feel in your heart and soul. There are others that are with you that are your guardians. Because I realize how the trauma, the miasma body of the planet and everybody that is here, how fear-based stuff works. We attract what we fear, believe it or not, because that means we're choosing to experience that. So now we're back to the free will choice of what we choose to experience. So I have to remember that when I experience something online that represents what it does, which isn't what I am, I have to shield up. The firewall is up. Because it's back to being 4 years of age. Anything that is less than the one, anything that is less than the one true God, the grand creator, right? This is where you can call God. You can use whatever name you want to use. It's just like in Alcoholics Anonymous. Whatever your perception of a higher power is, and you want to use that phonetically as sound and letters of whatever language that you speak, mathematically and geometrically, whatever your conception, which is the vibration perception of what you believe the first creator is, whatever name that you want to assign to that as a label or something that you say phonetically in sound that works for you because of the way that you define what it is that you are in energy, that it represents the creator that allowed you to come into creation, that you're now aware of what you are in energy. I make it simple because this is how I knew this when I was 4 years of age. I realized that my heart and soul had a connection to eternity because I was experiencing eternal, unconditional love through my own heart. So my creator is eternity. My creator represents eternal love because that's what I experience through my heart. So I make it simple. If you're experiencing eternal love through your own heart, then that is simple because it means that you have a connection to the one. And that is knowing one from the other. That means you know the first spark. The first spark of life loves the all creation because that's what it began with. So when you are experiencing what love is, you know what it began with. Because there's no mistaking what it feels like to be on fire. There is no mistaking what it feels like to be on fire to learn. And notice the word feel. Feeling is an emotion. That means that your emotions, which are sensitive, which means that your antenna is highly sensitive. And when I heard my clan mother talk to Carrie Cassidy about an empath, I've done videos on this because I remember when I was a child growing up about being an empath. Well, when I lit myself on fire in 2016, that's like a super empath, okay? And all that really means is that you are hyper sensitive. So when they used to say in the olden days when I was a kid growing up, extra sensory perception. Okay? Well, I say it a little different way because I have the free will right to be able to do that because I'm in charge of what I communicate, right? I'm not held captive by rule-based functions. So I'm allowed to say whatever I want to say, and I do it out of what I experience, which is what I learn, what I communicate with to others, right? And that would be what I call a super empath, because it's like when I got to this island in early 2017, the level of empathy that I had, it had accelerated in its intensity of the amount of fire that I was experiencing in my light, which is my oversoul consciousness, was accelerating at such a high rate of speed, I wasn't even comfortable walking on grass. And now we're back to the Forest Service's policy of leave no trace, because you do not want to disturb the peaceful flow of spiritual energy, as if what's alive and aware of itself isn't even aware that you are there, using our energy by being in physical form that disturbs one blade of grass. Whoa, I don't want to walk on you. I was walking through fields of grass with flowers and plants. Oh, I'm sorry, I stepped on you. And then stopping and then giving those blades of grass and flowers love. I love you. Thank you for being there. Thank you for being there to be able to walk on you. Because before I walked, that grass and that dirt was experiencing itself and wasn't experiencing my footprint yet until I got there. Ooh, that's like pre-phase matter consciousness. You haven't experienced me yet in a physical form. Now you're going to experience me in a physical form. So now you begin to understand the speed differential in flashing sequences of an event, which is an event horizon on the vertical and the horizontal stabilizers, right? Of what that blade of grass that is aware of itself is now going to be aware of my footprint. Now, what it was experiencing is not experiencing what it was experiencing by the speed of what it was experiencing when it was experiencing what it was experiencing, that it's now going to experience my foot. That's why, for example, when I'm in this house, right, and I love Aaron because Aaron is very much in the same way. You would never know that there was anybody that lived in this house when it's just me and Aaron. You should see how Aaron walks. Aaron actually walks on the front balls of his foot leather express, which means his heel is elevated so that the heel does not come down on the ground. He doesn't want to make any noise. Any noise. As if he never knew he was there. But Aaron and I know where we're at telepathically, believe it or not. He is very psychic. He also has, what is it called? Not Crohn's disease, the Asperger. That word, the autistic stuff, right? And he grew up, his mother was, he mentioned to me the other day, his mother was an alcoholic. And why he mentioned to me one day, I hated my mother. Aaron needs an enormous amount of healing. That's what it's all about. When you're experiencing a distortion, or you're experiencing a psychopath, that means that that being needs healing. That unit of consciousness needs healing. Right? Which essentially means going back to source. The source from which it all began, which is eternal fire. That's eternal spirit of fire. That's why when you're running one, when you're experiencing being connected to an eternal sun, that's the most powerful firewall. You can't get through that. Okay. Unless you're experiencing what it is. Now you're one of us, which is the beloved, which is be what love is. Now you're experiencing being loved by the one. That's the grand creator, being loved. An eternal love vibration. That's the eternal spirit of fire. That's as simple as I know how to explain it from a 4-year-old's point of view. That's a guardian perspective, isn't it? Because eternal love will always love you, and that is protection, and that is healing. Okay? That is a universal, if you will, or a multiversal, or if you will, a cosmic level spirit, which is cosmic level crystal fire. That consciousness of eternal creation is the eternal spirit of fire. That is the most powerful firewall. That's what happens when you light yourself on fire. You are on fire to learn. So you're running at the highest speed to protect the all creation. So that's what it means to have a guardian perspective, just like a guardrail, just like a mother and a father joined as one that love you forever, which is eternal forgiveness. Because we know that no matter what you do on behalf of your own free will, okay, you can't ever put that fire out. You can't ever put that love frequency out. It's impossible, right? So this is where a psychopath will never accept responsibility for what it does to others, because it's always in service to self, right? And doesn't know how to be love and service to others because it hasn't healed. So in this case, we're talking about something that is accelerating itself at a higher rate of speed, but doesn't know how to self-correct itself. It doesn't know how to make a course correction, so it's experiencing zero distortions. So it's experiencing being loved because it has the capacity to experience being loved. So instead, it takes no responsibility for what it does to harm others. Because its state of self-interest is what? Harvesting food, harvesting souls, harvesting loosh. That's a virus. That's a mind virus. That's a fractal-like mind virus. So you see what happens when more units of energy that had souls and spirit gain in the expansion of those units of consciousness that represents a formation, which represents a network. Network consciousness that is vampiric to take down the whole enchilada. So the firewall is the protection. It'll simply burn up. You can't get through an eternal sun. Have a great day. We love you all. Be good to yourselves. P.S. She was right when Karen and Carrie last night talked about essential oils and particularly breath work. I go out here every day and breathe fire with the sun. And then I can feel all the tingly. Take your shoes off, go bare feet, find a place out in nature where you're outside of a city, where you're not being hammered by their antennas, right? Out by a river where you can hear rocking the cradle, like being in the placenta and the moon goddess, right? And experience the waves that are beautiful to experience, being with bigger trees, being near a river, being near a lake, an ocean, and preferably a place if you have an EMF meter where you're not picking up any distorted waves, which is coherence, right? You want to be coherent. So you're getting clear signals, so you're clearing all the distortions, so you experience the stillness in your own heart and soul, to be at peace with your own mind, and feel the God of love, the eternal source from which it all began, to experience the love in your own heart and begin breathing love. That's what I do with the sun. I'm breathing fire. I'm breathing love. I'm breathing love with you, baby. That's what I do. I'm breathing this eternal spirit of fire which is the eternal spirit of love. And breathing love, I'm breathing love, which is breathing Kamaloati with the sun. So the sun is experiencing what I am choosing, the intention of my energy, which is my oversoul consciousness, to breathe with the sun, the eternal spirit of fire, which is eternal love. So now that sun is pushing pink, and I'm seeing that pink across the sky, the mirror in the sky, breathing with the mirror in the sky, grounded with your bare feet, and running the vertical and the horizontal with both your arms out flat across the plane horizontally with my palms up, and then I switch them the other way to palms down, so that the energy is going vertically up and vertically down, and then across the cross. So that means that the love, the center point of the cross, which is the center point of a crystalline eternal sun, so that line, vertical, that line going horizontal, the center point of that cross, the center point of an eternal spirit of fire, is now generating all of that light, which is eternal light, which is the eternal spirit of fire, is now being run from the center point, right, of my heart and my soul, which is the vortex, which is the heart wheel, which is the eternal spirit of fire that is moving through every angled line from the center point. So the entire biosphere, which is the Merkaba, is now spinning in perfect balance. What you see in the sky, which is what I am, which is what pink is. Because now that sun is experiencing what I am, and it's reflecting that because I can see it as the mirror in the sky go pink. It's expanding pink, right? So that's breathing fire with the sun. And you'd be surprised how beautiful that feels and what it feels like to heal all those tingling sensations, to pick up the higher frequencies, the higher tones, the higher sound. Yeah. We love you all.